Wednesday, June 19th, 2019, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. This morning I want to talk about a couple of subjects. First one is gold as a barometer and what that means, and why they manipulate the markets like they did yesterday in gold. And I want to talk about also a story about Davy Crockett, who is remembered as one of the guys who died at the Alamo, but he was also a congressman from that Tennessee. And I want to talk about a story entitled Not Yours to Give. It's one of my favorite stories. It's not long. I'll put a link below to it in the description, and I highly recommend you read it. I read it many years ago, and I read it again yesterday, and it's a great story. Yeah, it encapsulates my views on the role of government and what government should really be, and unfortunately, what government also can reflect about the people who vote, for political officers out there. Yesterday, of course, early on in the day before the market opened in the U.S., we saw ECB President Draghi come out and say he's ready to do all it takes again. He's put rate cuts, more QE, out there. He was at a conference ECB conference in Portugal, probably really nice and sunny, and a lot of good food, wine, all paid by you, of course, the taxpayer, the European taxpayer in this case. And then, the reaction to the markets were bond markets rallied, the prices, yields collapsed. Even the 10-year yield in the U.S. went down to 202. The Bund, 10-year yield Bund, I think made a new low in terms of negative yields, the 10-year in Germany. Gold was trading above 1350 again. And then, the banking cartel came out. It was around, I think, 9:40 a.m. New York time, just after the New York Stock Exchange opened. And then they did this to gold. I mean, I know gold had gone up quite a bit in the morning, but it took a while for it to go up. But all of a sudden, in less than 10 minutes, we see gold drop from above 1352 to as low as, well, afterwards it went down to below 1340, and it actually tried to rally back up. It actually rallied back up above 1350. But the cartel was there, so to keep gold from rising. So I want to talk as gold as a barometer, and that's what it's all about. You see, you've got the central bankers coming out, and hey, they haven't admitted that their policy of the last 11 years hasn't worked, and they're going to try it again, right? So that's what it's all about. So this book here, A Pocketbook of Gold, Survival Manual for Monetary Mayhem. And I think we're getting closer and closer to that. And the more they try to tinker with the barometer, i.e. to make it seem like there's no financial storm coming, the more people are going to get hurt. The stock market, of course, is, in the analogy would be, if you know a hurricane is coming in Florida, you're going to tell people to evacuate. You're not going to tell them to go to the beach. And that's what the stock market is, central bankers telling people to stay by the coast when a force, 4 or 5 hurricane is approaching the coast of Florida. So, yeah, this is by Jim Sinclair and Peter Carling. I've recommended this book before. It's this pocketbook. It's hard to find, and I don't think it's cheap, but you can try to find it on Amazon or anywhere online. On page 60, it talks about gold as a barometer. And it says here, gold is a barometer of fear and confidence, not inflation. And they quote Peter Monk in 2009. Peter Monk, I think he was CEO of Barrick Gold. says, and I quote, "Gold is no more than a barometer. It indicates the general feeling of security people have about other asset classes." There you go. So you can't have gold rising like that on a day where Mario Draghi comes out and says he's going to, have a go again to do whatever it takes, that things are not well. And then today you've got Powell as well and the FOMC, right? If you feel safe, hold other assets. If you're concerned, and let me tell you, most people in the world are concerned, then you move to gold. The biggest driver of gold price is a fundamental lack of confidence in government. Well, there you go, government or central banking. So that's why they manipulate the markets. And some people might think that gold will never, act as a barometer, will never give the true indication of where things are. But I think it will. I don't think they will be able to keep the price of gold and silver, for that matter, where they are for much longer. What about Davy Crockett? Well, I've recommended many times the book The Law by Frederick Bastiat. One of his sayings is that the state is the great fiction by which everyone thinks they can live at the expense of everyone else. And I still recommend the book. But this story I read many years ago, and I was thinking about it last week, Not Yours to Give. And I won't go through it, the whole thing, because it's a fairly long story, but I'll put the link below in the description. I took it off the Foundation for Economic Education, or FEE.org website. What does it say here? It says the following story about the famed American icon Davy Crockett was published in Harper's Magazine in 1867. As written by James J. Bethune, a pseudonym used by Edward S. Ellis. The events that are recounted here are true, including Crockett's opposition to the bill in question, though the precise rendering and some of the details are fictional. So yeah, most people remember Davy Crockett as, dying in the Alamo in 1836. Remember the Alamo? But if you look here at Davy Crockett, his background on Wikipedia, he was actually, a representative in the House, in Congress, for Tennessee. He served there for the 12th District, 1833 to 1835. And then he served before for the 9th District from 1827 to 1831. So he was a congressman for about 6 years. And so let's go over this story. I'll summarize it basically, and I'll let you read it. So he's in Congress, and they want to pass a bill to give a pension to the widow of a general or someone in the military that had just died. And all the arguments were very much made sense. People were making, giving their reasons why Congress should help this widow because her husband served the country so well, and that the Congress owed him a debt of gratitude. But then Davy Crockett, he makes a speech in Congress and says he's against it. And he says, not because I don't believe in charity, but because Congress is not supposed to be a charity. And he notes as well that this, this widow's husband, he was working for the military. He did fight in the war, and he was working in the military until the day he died. So the U.S. government didn't owe him anything technically. And he also said, the Constitution doesn't say anything about Congress being a charity, but it also didn't stop, if, the Congress, the members of Congress wanted to give this donation, this charity, this pension to this widow. They could do it out of their own pockets as private individuals. And he actually noted, you know, I'm probably one of the poorest men in this in the house, but I'm prepared to give 1 week, you know, 1 week of my pay for this widow. And he actually noted that if all the members of Congress did the same thing, they probably give more money than they were, you know, thinking of giving to this widow. I think it was $20,000. This vote was expected to go through unanimously almost, but after Davy Crockett's speech in Congress, it didn't go through. So this story recounts why he, you know, he was asked, you know, why did you give this speech? Why did you say that? And he goes back to a few years back when he was starting to campaign a little bit in his district, and he was walking out in Tennessee by a farm, and there was a farmer plowing the field, and he was coming towards the fence, and he, you know, measured his how can I say, his pace, so he could meet this farmer at the fence, and they meet, and Davy Crockett says, you know, good afternoon or good morning, sir, and he says, hopefully I'll have your vote in the next election. And this farmer says, well, I voted for you in the last election, but I will not be voting for you this time around. And Davy Crockett is really shocked, and he asks why. And he explains why. Well, and he says, you know, even though I'm here in the middle of nowhere, I do get my newspapers from Washington, D.C., and I read everything that Congress does. And I saw that you voted for this bill for Congress to help these people in Georgetown, just outside Washington, D.C., when there was a fire, and you know, all these families lost their homes, and yeah, you voted in this bill for Congress to give relief to these people, and this farmer said, I know the Constitution, and the Constitution does not say anything about charity or about taking other people's money to give to other people. And he said, that's why I'm not voting for you. I think you're honest, Colonel Crockett or Davy Crockett or Congressman Crockett, but you don't seem to know the Constitution. And then the story goes on to talk about how Davy Crockett actually says, you know, I agree with you. I will campaign in the next few days in the district, and I will tell everyone about this story, about your story. And then what happens afterwards, a few days later, Davy Crockett goes to the farm. The farmer, who's called Horatio Bunce, organizes a barbecue. So on the day of the barbecue, Farmer Bunce has a huge crowd for Davy Crockett, and he gets up there and he admits that he was wrong for voting for that bill, and he will never do that again. That he got a lesson actually from Horatio Bunce on the Constitution, and then the whole crowd gets up and shouts Davy Crockett. So that's what it's all about, and he was reelected, by the way. So yeah, I really enjoyed this article and this story, and I highly recommend you read it. And at the end as well, the person from FEE who published that, Leonard E. Reed, said the following at the end of the article. Holders of political office are but reflections of the dominant leadership, good or bad, among the electorate. Horatio Bunce is a striking example of responsible citizenship. Were his kind to multiply, we would see many new faces in public office, or as in the case of Davy Crockett, a new Crockett. For either the new faces or the new Crocketts, we must look to Horatio in ourselves. That was Leonard E. Reed. So I really enjoyed that story. It's a great story. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. You can also follow me on Twitter, Steemit, and on DTube. I wish you all a great day. Take care. Bye.